Well, welcome to this video, and I hope you like it. If you do, click the like button, hit subscribe, and share with a friend. Okay, I'm kind of debating on whether I'm going to take some so-called B-roll or some still photos and put them in here on this. This is kind of an odd subject. It's probably a very touchy subject and something I really don't see getting any attention, really. You know, this one's about right-of-ways and the growing trend of creating memorials within right-of-ways. First off, let me just define what a right-of-way is. Now, pretty much anywhere there's a road, that's also where your utilities run. Usually the right-of-way is wider than the actual paved street and the sidewalk or shoulder, depending on where you're at. All your utilities normally run in there. That's your water, your gas, your electric, whether it's up in the air on poles or whether it's buried underground, fiber optic, sewers, storm sewers, all that stuff's under there. And of course the underground stuff really can't be seen on the surface. You only really know where it's at. You know, you'll see fire hydrants and you know there's a water line going through there somewhere. Oftentimes, especially on major roads, they try to run the utilities in the shoulder or in the grass beyond the paved shoulder if there is enough room within the right-of-way. Now, the right-of-way is, you know, a property boundary. In some instances, it's more or less an easement. When you create a new land development, normally, you know, they lay out the streets. All the properties extend to the center of the street, but the right-of-way comes through and defines a certain line that the you know, the municipal roads and the utilities, etc., can legally occupy. Now, if for some reason the road doesn't get built out, then the land would revert back to the property owners out to the center line. That's how it happens in a lot of cases. In other cases, the right-of-way, the road actually is its own property parcel owned by the government, usually the local municipality. This tends to be rarer, but I have actually seen that where the road is occupied on an actual parcel that belongs to the municipality. Either way, like I said, it's where your utilities and everything runs. That's how, you know, your water, your gas, your electric, your sewer, etc., gets from point A to point B. That includes, you know, above ground or below ground fiber optic or wire for internet, cable TV, all these things. If they cross private property, these utilities, each separate one would have to get an easement, some sort of a right-of-way of their own separately. But normally the public road right-of-way is open to all the utilities. They just, you know, they've usually got to talk to the local municipality who controls that right-of-way. So that is what a right-of-way is. We all kind of know it, but we don't know it. And a lot of times you don't know without a survey where its boundaries are. Usually a good rule of thumb is if you've got telephone poles, or more properly called utility poles, those poles are going to be within the right-of-way, and they're usually the farthest thing back. That's just a general rule of thumb. There's no hard, fast law to it, but normally you'll see where, you know, you have a street, then a sidewalk or a shoulder, and then outside of that you'll see the telephone poles running very close to the outside edge of that right-of-way. Main reason being that a telephone or utility pole is an impediment to pedestrians and vehicular traffic, therefore you don't want them in the middle of a sidewalk or in a shoulder where somebody might, you know, pull off to the shoulder when they're broke down or something. And so they try to put them as far back out of the way as possible. Not always, but they try. And you know, your other utilities, because they're underground, they you know, they're usually closer in, because also when they dig up to, you know, repair a pipe or a fiber optic cable or whatever, they don't want to be digging next to a telephone pole. Then, you know, you'd have to have a piece of machinery out there holding the pole up in case you're undermining it. So they try to put them under the sidewalk and or shoulder. Oftentimes things end up under the road itself, especially in more urban or suburban areas, and especially storm or combined sewer systems, because a lot of times they have the inlets from both sides of the street going to a central pipe in the middle. But lately, and it started probably late 90s, early 2000s, you started to see where things would happen and people, you know, would leave flowers or something at that spot if somebody was injured or killed. You know, most of the time what I'm talking about in this context is a tragic accidental death in a car crash or something like that. But you know, things of you know, people being shot and other things have done that. People, you know, leaving flowers or other things at the site of that incident. Not always an incident that involves death, but most of the time. And this has progressed. You know, now it seems like there's a lot of places you drive down the road and you'll pass a site where there was a car crash and somebody died and somebody, you know, left flowers or something at that site, but then it started to become a permanent memorial, almost like a marker in a graveyard. And some of these are very elaborate. There are some that I see around here where they've got, you know, solar powered little angels and flowers that light up at night, and they've got photographs and this and that, and there's places where they're in the right-of-way outside of the shoulder where people, you know, they mow the grass and they've planted, you know, perennial flowers and bushes. They've landscaped the area. You know, some of these are very elaborate and people have put a lot of time and money into them. And, you know, like I said, it's like an actual grave plot, the way it's maintained. Obviously, they didn't bury somebody on the side of the road, but perhaps the person was cremated and they distributed their ashes there. I do not know. Or maybe if the person was cremated and there is no grave site, this is a substitute. I don't really know all the ins and outs on that end of things because none of my circle of friends and family is part of this situation. But I know I drive by, I can think off the top of my head probably around half a dozen of them within a few miles of me. Some of them one of them's on an interstate, right off of 376 here, near Aliquippa on the eastbound side. And, you know, there's a couple other ones on, you know, fairly major roads, and some of them on fairly minor roads, but just in a section where, even though it's a suburban area, it's not like right in front of somebody's house. It's all, you know, near a wooded hillside or something. I'm thinking of one in particular on Route 51 on Stoops Ferry Road. But yeah, it's sad. The thing is, like I said, these are public right-of-ways. These are places where utilities run. These are places that are subject to construction, and there may be things underneath that memorial that the people who created that memorial are unaware of. You know, somebody's going to dig up this thing you've been spending all your time and effort on to get at a broken water line, or just to replace something out of maintenance, or something became obsolete. Or what if, you know, the latest technology as far as things buried in the right-of-way right now is fiber optic, but say they come out with something new and they decide to put that through there, or they decide to widen the road. What's going to happen to that? Because this isn't consecrated ground. This isn't a family burial plot that somebody's paid for. This is the public right-of-way. You're basically creating these shrines on a roadside, and technically, even though you're outside of the paved cartway and the paved shoulder or sidewalk in that area, you are still in that public domain. That's, you know, it's the roadside. And I know that, you know, I remember back when this first started, hearing about a police officer who got in trouble for cleaning up some things that were left behind by somebody at one of these shrines. They took the stuff down. It's a nuisance in the public right-of-way. But public opinion's been sympathetic to the people creating these things. And, you know, my own personal opinion is you're just making it worse. You should have a zero tolerance on anything beyond a certain short time frame, a couple of weeks, a month, or whatever. Then you need to have a grave site or someplace else to visit, because the public road is the public road. And letting these things become large and elaborate, and letting people invest, you know, hundreds of dollars. Like I said, some of these things are getting pretty elaborate. They're spending hundreds of dollars on maintaining these sites, and they're spending all that effort, and they've got all that emotion tied into that site. You're just making it worse when, you know, a construction project's going to come through there eventually. It might be tomorrow, it might not be for 10 or 15 years, but eventually somebody's coming through there with a backhoe and destroying that shit. And there's no reason that taxpayer dollars should be recreating the same thing, or that a utility company should be using their utility fees paid by their ratepayers to preserve and protect or reestablish this. It's something that should not be there. You can't just claim part of a public right-of-way and build a shed there. You should have an equal concept for building one of these memorials. The fact that somebody died in a traffic accident or something, it's tragic. Nobody wants to step on your feelings, but you've got to think about the long term. Nothing within that public right-of-way is, is permanent. You know, and if a public utility digs into the shoulder or digs into the road, they have to restore it back to the way it was, as far as the way it was planned. It's either got to be, you know, the street surface, the sidewalk, or the landscaping, revegetate it. There's nothing saying they've got to put back your grave markers or you know, reroute their sewer or their water line around it or something like that. And it's just something that, you know, no politician wants to be the bad guy telling a grieving person that they can't have that monument there, but it's just setting things up for a much worse outcome. You know, that public right-of-way was set up for the road and the utilities, and it's supposed to be for the road and the utilities alone. Putting other things in there is, you know, even billboards got to be outside of the right-of-way. It's just something that's overlooked in society that we need to deal with, and we need to get rid of them. And people need to stop putting up new ones, because like I said, they're going to get bulldozed eventually. And, you know, it shouldn't be on me through my taxes and, you know, my water bills and electric bills to be paying extra to restore or somehow preserve these random pop-up monument sites that are being created now. So with that, hopefully makes people think a little bit about something they might not be thinking about. Like I said, I'm up in the air on putting in any photos of these things. They're in the public right away. There's nothing legally stopping me from photographing any of them. I just don't know if I want to, you know, be putting people out there who are doing this for one of their lost loved ones. It feels a little bit icky doing it, but at the same time, it's wrong for that thing to be there in the first place. But yeah. See you on the next one. Well, I hope you found that video informative. Hopefully it made you think, and please click the like button and subscribe if you haven't done that already, and check out the video that should be appearing somewhere around me here, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thanks.